When I applied to be in the Alzheimer clinical trial, I explained to the doctors that my brain fog persisted. Every day seemed to rotate through many symptoms, including the cough, unpredictable body temperature, difficulty breathing, extreme headaches out of the blue, body aches, nausea, queasiness, sudden total energy drains from okay to zero in a few seconds, difficulty thinking consecutive thoughts or retaining one thought along with the next, reaching an intersection on foot, and forgetting how the lights work in conjunction with the cars, forgetting how to do simple arithmetic problems, losing words frequently, rapid heartbeat for a few minutes at a time, and the rash, of course. I had difficulty sleeping, waking up during the night, heaviness in my chest, blood pressure spikes, constant fatigue. I felt as if the virus had turned into malicious little creatures taking over my body. The worst part was a continual awareness that I was not getting better and still could not think clearly and was gradually going downhill. When I was tested for Alzheimer's, the doctors who tested me did acknowledge that my problems were consistent with the ones people were having for this trial, and I probably would qualify. With continued testing, they found that on a particular test, my score was too high to actually be in the study because it didn't fit with the rest of the group. At that point, I was getting pretty depressed about it. My doctors had asked me to fill out an advance directive at the end, so I found myself trying, but I was unable to process the questions. I didn't have the focus and the sustained energy to gather the needed information. I tried to write a will, but I could not make reasonable decisions about how to handle things, given that my husband was at that point in worse condition than I was. While this was going on, my ex-husband, father of two of my children, who had come down with pneumonia after Christmas 2020, had not recovered enough to breathe without had not recovered enough to exercise, and he downplayed it to our children. But he became seriously ill in January of 2022 and could not breathe without oxygen. Within a month, he had been hospitalized, and towards the end of February, he died. The children were devastated, as were we all. I don't think he had ever recovered from his pneumonia in 2020, likely caught at our house around Christmas or New Year's. Loved by all of us in the extended family, this was a huge blow. That spring, when a memorial was planned, the day of the memorial, our son came down with COVID, and it had to be put off. By October of 2023, when I had begun working with a therapist and trying to figure out how to live my life around this endless deficit, I had been following the Facebook group of long COVID sufferers. The group had begun with a kind of militant, though friendly energy of people who were not getting any help of any kind from the medical profession. And on top of that, were being told there's nothing wrong with them. By October of 2023, those of us who had been wrestling with this hidden total disability for a long time were trying to do our own research on how to find some kind of information from what research must have been done by then. We have no idea was no longer cutting it for us. There must be an answer somewhere of some sort, or at least help. Some people on Facebook were mentioning treatment and claiming some success in feeling somewhat better. It was just a handful, but a handful is something. In Portland, Oregon, and where my medical care comes from, Kaiser, I looked at everything they offered. None of it was related to COVID. When I asked my doctors, none of them had any information. When I would go for testing, I would ask the doctors and the nurses if they knew of anyone who dealt with COVID treatment of some kind. Eventually, I learned that OHSU had some kind of COVID group, and I learned that while I was being outsourced from Kaiser to have a specialist determine whether I might have had a heart attack or stroke, I couldn't get into that group. In a subsequent visit to OHSU during the Alzheimer's testing, I spoke to a nurse who told me about a doctor at Kaiser who had devoted her time to studying long COVID and might be able to help me get help. I contacted my doctor right away and asked for a referral so I could contact this Dr. Rebecca Kennedy. My doctor assumed I wanted to switch primary doctors, as Dr. Kennedy was also a family practice doctor. I did not. I just wanted to speak with someone willing to talk about long COVID and offer suggestions. I asked my doctor if she knew anything about what Kaiser might be offering, and she replied that Dr. Kennedy's research had something to do with brain messages. The gesture she made reminded me of the way people talk about magical tinfoil hats. But eventually, my doctor told me I should just make an appointment. When I tried to make an appointment, I couldn't figure out how to do it. She was not listed in the lists I could find. Later, I realized she'd been listed under alternative medicine. I finally called the psychiatry department and got a rookie new guy answering my call. I told him I was trying to find Dr. Rebecca Kennedy. He wasn't able to find her, but he was new, so he said, let me just look in some other places. Moments later, he got back to me and said he had a number I could try. I tried it, and someone answered and was able to give me an appointment with Dr. Kennedy. I waited a moment as they checked her schedule, preparing myself for her new patient availability to start a few months later, as had been the case with most of my appointments. They came back and said, are you available next Wednesday at 3 o'clock? You bet I was. So on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, I met Dr. Kennedy. There was no intermediary taking vital signs. Instead, I spent at least an hour talking with her about long COVID and absorbing what she had learned about the source of these enduring symptoms so many people were struggling with. What I noticed first about her was that she listened very carefully to everything I said and never suggested long COVID was anything but real. She also never suggested that long COVID was a mystery. Instead, she related to me what she had learned about it from a few patients who had gone to be treated by someone who had cured them almost instantly. She had found this so remarkable that she checked out how this healing came about. Without trying to explain exactly what she taught me, and has continued teaching me over Zoom for several weeks, it all comes back to the original traumatic experience of contracting COVID. And it was traumatic. I had never considered the fact that aside from the physical symptoms I was having, the isolation, the inability to lead my life as I had been before, some external intervention, I had been unaware that my body could be recreating the effects of illness by making them happen again. My anxiety about my failure to return to normal was perpetuating the signals to my autoimmune system, and my autoimmune system was responding to those signals by recreating the defense mechanisms it had previously needed. I had been aware of what the emotional term trigger describes, as I have PTSD, such that when I'm exposed to certain harmless gestures, I'm frightened as if they once again were going to hurt me. But I had not realized that the body can be physically activated by the mere fearful thought that pain is about to happen again. If I move the wrong way, or if I might not be able to breathe, or that I should lie down because I'm suddenly tired, or that I shouldn't go for a walk because I might not be able to get home again. In 3.5 years of trying to find out why I couldn't breathe easily, or why I felt nauseated or confused, I had not exercised much at all, had not worked or attempted to stick to a schedule, or socialized with friends, or traveled, or really relaxed. I've been afraid to catch COVID again, believing I do not have the stamina to survive it. And I've been trying hard to recover, so the attempt to recover has been taking over my attitude and my behavior. Dr. Kennedy, since then, has been leading me in a small group of other patients with long COVID in some exercises in thinking, in writing, in responding to our symptoms differently. And I've found my recovery from long COVID to be almost immediate. Within 2 weeks, I began to feel like the person I really was. I didn't count on that to last, but I gradually began to exercise, even if it was scary. I went into a pulmonary rehab program, coincidentally from one of my previous breathing difficulty appointments, and was put on a treadmill with a heart monitor and blood pressure monitor and a team of people standing by to take care of whatever might be going to happen. So I relaxed a bit, and gradually I was able to walk farther and farther and felt safe. I didn't count on that to last, but I just kept doing it. twice a week for a half an hour. I became less anxious, even about other things than the virus. I attempted to breathe using my entire diaphragm. It was hard work because I had spent such a long time deliberately avoiding it. I discovered I could sing again, though it's difficult to keep a steady note. I'm still not ready to attempt karaoke, but I'd like to. It helps a lot sending concrete messages to myself that it isn't necessarily the virus that's refusing to resolve, but the trauma from having the virus that has not been dealt with. While I've attempted a healthy lifestyle in the past, I had never seen my inner voice as an active part of staying alive. I was aware that bad habits are not the fault of the brain, but come from whatever part of me that seems to override my common sense. Eating too much ice cream, trying to ice skate after 50 years away from the ice, riding zip lines, giving in to the 16-year-old who dominates my inner world that is infinitely more appealing than the sensible old lady who says no. My parents had attributed most problems to weak character or unworthiness or inappropriate behavior. Even coming down with mononucleosis my freshman year of college was a self-inflicted hazard. And no, I could not come home to recover. College was expensive, so was airfare home, and they were still in Europe. Weeks in the infirmary in isolation, struggling with homework, not attending class, gave me a lifelong memory, one that got on board again when COVID hit. Working with Dr. Kennedy, I've learned ways of communicating more effectively with myself and taking responsibility for relearning behaviors that are useful and healthy, and giving them the opportunity to override the faulty messages created by triggers. Now, when I feel queasy or very tired, I pay attention to the fact that I've noticed it, but I have the ability to accept that if it's real, fine, but it might not be real, and I might try going ahead and seeing if it goes away. Sometimes I can see that it's a temporary observation and it passes. I don't have to give it my full attention, seek help, or go to bed. I just have to notice it and treat it kind of like a wrong number if there's no evidence that there is really a problem. Dr. Kennedy at our first meeting sent me documented evidence of what the mind-body connection had to do with the autonomic nervous system in the form of articles published in peer-reviewed journals, names of other professionals studying the same phenomenon. And I had been following a pathway in the literature that fully supports her insights into how the mind can interact with the physical body to create healing and improvement. I like to think the entire medical profession is entering a new phase of appreciation for what possibilities for healing exist beyond prescriptions and procedures. I look forward to a time when we can all go to our doctors and not be treated like a car that has broken down. Maybe we need to be our own check engine light. We need to politely ignore those friends or family or professionals who doubt that we are really sick, who are fatigued by helping out, who have no rehab nursing home to send us to where we might actually catch COVID once again. It is January now, and I can walk a mile in 20 minutes, follow a recipe when I need to, and play trains on the floor with the 2-year-old, despite my arthritic knees. Yesterday, I noticed for the first time in many years, there was not a single sign of my psoriasis. I think I won't call it mine anymore. My fingernails aren't bitten. I'm not in a hurry to get something done. And I have no inclination to stress out because we are snowed in. The laundry is in progress. The sheets have all been changed. A few house plants that barely survived in the last few years have been watered with new dirt, and they seem happy to be alive, as I am.